this computer. Hello everyone, my name's Sharon Sherry and I have the pleasure today to introduce you to a reading from Laura Boon. Before I do hand over to Laura, however, let me tell you a little bit about her. Laura stole her first romance from her father's bookshelves as a teenager, and it was The Flame and the Flower by Kathleen Woodiwiss, and was immediately captivated. After holding a variety of positions in publishing, from bookseller to sales rep and publicist, she eventually found the courage to write her own stories. She was born in Zambia, grew up in South Africa, and went to university in America. She's truly international. She now lives in Australia with her adorable dogs, Bo and Arrow. When she's not reading or writing, she enjoys baking, playing tennis, and walking alongside Sydney's beautiful harbour. Laura writes a monthly column for Romance Writers of Australia called Tips from an Industry Insider. She was named ARRA's favourite debut romance author in 2018 and writes contemporary and historical romance. Laura, thanks for joining us today for the reading.
Hi Sharon, thanks very much for the introduction.
All right, I'm going to disappear and leave you to read for our readers. One moment, please.
Hello everyone, I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to be sharing a sneak peek today from On the Edge, the second in my Romancing the Alps series, due out later this year. The series is set in the Chamonix Valley of the French Alps and centers around a small family hotel, the Auberge de la Montagne. It is owned by Jeannie Leroux and her financial partner, Australian Matt Hanley. Jeannie's daughter, Carolyn, or Caro, works in the hotel, as does their close friend, Pierre Picard. In the first book, The Millionaire Mountain Climber, Matt falls in love with another Australian, Hayley Gordon, and she joins their tight-knit unit. On the Edge is Caro's story. If you read the first book, you may remember that she returned from Norway to help when her mother was injured and hinted to Hayley and her mother that she had had a short affair whilst on holiday. The scene I am going to read is the one in which Caro discovers that her Norwegian lover, Anders, has arrived unexpectedly at the hotel. Normally, Carolyn Leroux loved spring in the French Alps. She loved the crisp, cool days, the green grass, and the wildflowers that sprung up everywhere. She loved being able to walk past their family hotel, the Auberge de la Montagne, down to the small city of Chamonix, past stone churches and lowing cows. She loved the camaraderie that came from working with close friends and family. Normally, but not today. Today, she remembered why she had run off to university in Paris several years earlier. Small communities were hotbeds of curiosity, and at the first hint of juicy gossip, family were the nosiest and most unhelpful people of all. She hovered just inside her mother's private rooms at the hotel, the door open a crack, waiting for a reliable source of information to pass by on the way to the kitchen, the heart of the hotel. Quick, light footsteps indicated Hayley Gordon was headed for her mid-afternoon coffee break. Hayley was a friend, not family, having arrived at the hotel last year on a working holiday, only to fall in love with her mother's business partner, Matt Hanley. Caro was relying on Hayley for a solution because, God knows, she didn't have one. She snuck a hand through the barely open door and grabbed Hayley's arm as she walked past, eliciting a startled squeak. "Shh," she whispered, and hauled Hayley inside the suite before closing the door quietly. "Caro, what on earth?" "Shh," Caro repeated, dragging Hayley into the sitting room before collapsing on the sofa. "This is good, yes? I don't think anyone can hear us talking here." Hayley sat on the couch next to her. "I'm sure they can't. What's wrong, Caro?" "Oh, Hayley, it is a disaster. What am I going to do?" She buried her head in her hands. "What's a disaster?" Hayley's voice dropped to a low whisper to match her own, which Caro found comforting. Hayley was a sympathetic audience and an excellent organizer. If anyone could help her find a way out of this mess, it was Hayley. Hayley patted her arm and pulled her hands away from her face. "Tell me what's happened, Caro. I've been here all morning, and as far as I know, no one has died." Caro sniffed. Sometimes you are most annoying, Hayley. There are disasters far worse than death. Such as, he is here at the auberge. It is unbelievable. It is wrong. I did not give him permission to be here. Caro, I am going to douse you in ice-cold water if you don't stop speaking in riddles. Who is here? Him. My Nordic god. Who else could bother me so? Hayley raised an eyebrow. I thought he was just a fling. He is. That's why he cannot be here. It is most annoying. Indignation straightened her spine. She sat up and stopped whispering. It is so rude, no? Arriving here without an invitation. Typical of a barbarian from the north. Hayley started to laugh. It is not funny, mon ami. I am still most attracted to him. That is, when he is not scowling and looking exactly like his heathen ancestors who raped and pillaged their way through Europe. Actually, that's not true, Hayley interrupted. I read in a newspaper that the Vikings are much maligned. DNA tests show that there is not a great deal of Viking blood in the English, so it is likely they sent home for their wives rather than rape the local girls. Caro glowered at her. But they did probably rape, loot and pillage, Hayley conceded. Hayley, you are not helping, Caro moaned. My life is falling apart before my very eyes, and you are giving me a history lesson. How, I ask you, does this knowledge help me with my crisis? Hayley's eyes twinkled and her lips twitched. You needn't fear being pounced upon. I am not afraid because I think he might attack me. I am afraid because I know I will not be able to resist him. She sighed. This is all very, very bad. What's so bad about a handsome guy chasing you across Europe? I think it is romantic. Caro waved a hand in a dismissive gesture. Of course you think it is romantic. You and Matt are so in love. You see romance in the mating of cows. Never actually seen a cow mate, Hayley murmured. Not sure I would. Hayley. She fell silent, but her eyes danced. And how do you know he is handsome? Caro demanded. Matt introduced me to him at reception, Hayley admitted. Matt introduced, was my mother there? Yep. Caro put her hands in her head again. All is lost. She looked up and scowled. I suppose he has been checked in. Uh-huh. I am surrounded by traitors, she grumbled. What am I to do? Say hello, suggested Hayley. Smart ass, said Caro. That was the correct Australianism, no? Hayley grinned. You'll have to say hello at some stage. May as well get it over and done with. It is not necessary to greet him. Certainly I can avoid him. I will take up Danielle's position as housekeeper and cleaner and send her to reception. It will serve Mama right to have to deal with that chatterbox. Taking sides with Matt and Anders. It is unforgivable. Danielle is a chatterbox? Really? Hayley, stay on topic. It is difficult when you are so cranky. Hayley stood. Tea? No, what about a small pick-me-up? Maybe it will loosen your tongue enough to explain the problem properly. And then you can go and greet him like an old friend. Ha! Much you know, said Caro. She was aware she was being a diva, but she couldn't help it. How dare Anders invade her space, her home? She had left him in Norway where he belonged and was supposed to stay. She fumed while Hayley rang the kitchen and placed an order for coffee with their chef and friend, Pierre Picard. 2 Café Calvados, please, Pierre. It's an emergency. And then resumed her seat on the sofa. Hayley took Caro's hand in hers. Begin at the beginning, she said. The beginning you already know. I met him in Norway while I was traveling. We had an affair. Then I left. It was over. A holiday romance. That is all. Did he agree it was a holiday romance? It is not like we had a lengthy discussion about it. In answer to Hayley's raised eyebrow, she said, I met him in a bar. We had a week of superior sex. I left. What did he expect? The Scandinavians are all about free love. Supposedly. Certainly it is what I expected. So you loved him and left him like the bad girl you pretend to be. Caro snorted. You English, Australians, you English must always put a judgment on sex. It is most tiresome of you. Pierre entered without knocking. What is tiresome of Hayley? He carried a tray with 3 coffees. But of course, now she would have to explain everything to him too. Pierre and Matt were like brothers to her. Today, this was not a thought that pleased her. Today, she wanted to be an only child. This belief one must fall in love with everyone one has sex with, she said. But of course, said Pierre. What else can one do? He raised an eyebrow. Unless the sex was very bad. Caro felt herself blush. It was so annoying she blushed further, making her look, she was sure, like a schoolgirl. The quality of the sex is not up for discussion, she said, in as dignified a tone as she could muster, whilst looking like an overcooked tomato. You already said the sex was spectacular, objected Hayley, and that he is a Nordic god. I don't see how you could think of him as a god unless he was amazing in bed. Ah! Caro threw up her hands. You digress. Of course the love does not have to last, mused Pierre, sipping on his coffee. He had settled into a chair and showed no sign of returning to work. It is Caro we are talking about, not you, said Hayley. Caro seized the opening. It is a French thing. You English would not understand. Australian. A little love is always mixed up with the lust, but once the lust is sated, she shrugged her shoulders. I am glad I am not French, said Hayley. This confusion between lust and love, followed by an inability to look one's ex-lovers in the eye, sounds exhausting. I have no trouble looking my ex-lovers in the eye, said Pierre. It is not that I cannot look him in the eye, it is just that you are scared you will fall back into bed with him and the sex will be as great as ever, supplied Pierre. And then what will you do? Said Hayley. Caro glared suspiciously at the pair. Yes, they were both smirking. She scowled. Pierre's tone was gentle. Caro, I have known you since you were 12 years old and you have not had one long-term relationship. Not one. Don't you think it is time you gave it a try? Her lungs constricted. For a moment, she felt dizzy. Breathe, she told herself, remembering her psychologist's advice from all those years ago. Breathe. Her arms folded around her waist. She flattened them against her thighs, lifted her chin, and shrugged dismissively. I don't see the benefits of long-term. How can you know if you don't try? Asked Hayley. She looked puzzled. Pierre looked kind. She hated knowing he pitied her. It is her parents' fault, said Pierre. Oh, said Hayley. She tilted her head sideways. My parents weren't the best example either, you know. I suppose they loved each other, but they didn't love me. Caro drained her coffee. Mine both loved me, but not each other. They said humans are not meant to be monogamous. Jeannie said that? Hayley sounded scandalized. To be accurate, she said men weren't meant to be monogamous. Bah, said Pierre. Not true, said Hayley, speaking over him in high-pitched indignation, even although Matt, her fiancé, was such a player. Correction, he used to be a player. These days, he did not even look at other women. It was nauseating, really. Caro turned her frustration on Pierre. I understand why Hayley believes in romance, but you can hardly claim to be monogamous. Pierre arched a supercilious eyebrow. He even managed to look offended. Of course I am monogamous. If I am going out with someone, I do not fuck around on her. Of what orgies do you accuse me? I am not. She broke off at the sound of a door opening. They are probably all in here, said her mother. She appeared at the entrance of the sitting room. Apparently, I pay my employees to drink coffee, not to work. Neither Hayley nor Pierre moved a muscle. Everyone knew her mother's bark was worse than her bite. Coffee with Calvados, said Pierre cheerfully. Really? Oh, I am so proud of you, Hayley. I thought I would never see the day. I have acquired the taste, said Hayley cheerfully, both for brandy and drinking during the day. I did warn you about letting me sleep with the boss. The naughty god behind her mother made a strangled sound, choking back a laugh, probably, but he might have been outraged. She couldn't tell because she refused to look at him. Even if she hadn't realized Anders was in the hotel, she would have known it was him. He radiated an aura she would feel anywhere. It consumed the air, large and demanding, just as his presence filled the doorway. All 6'4", broad-shouldered, large-thighed, blonde-haired, green-eyed magnificence of him. How was she going to survive? Mert, she muttered. Ah, Caroline, there you are, said her mother, as if just discovering her. You did not tell me your friend would be visiting us. Very remiss of you. Caro dragged her eyes from the fascinating rim of her coffee cup and met her mother's gaze. Jeannie's eyes sparkled with mischief and delight. Anders peered over her shoulder, a hawk-like glint in his eyes and a half smirk playing on his lips. She felt like a pigeon about to be snared. She straightened her spine. Bonjour, Anders, she said. Her formality was intended to put him in his place. However, his lips twitched and he dropped his head in a parody of a bow. Caroline. She glowered. Her mother clapped her hands, dispelling the tension. She pointed at Pierre. You have a kitchen to supervise, my chef, and Hayley, I need you in the office. Caro, you will show Anders to his room. I have put him in number 15. She swept out in a whirl of energy, followed more slowly by the other two. Pierre stopped to greet Anders, welcome him to the Auberge de la Montagne. Traitor. Hayley looked back at her and mouthed the word Caro would like to believe was sorry, but looked more like hot. Then they were all gone. She swallowed the last of her coffee for courage and stood, best to face her nemesis on her feet. Well, that's a taste of Caro and Anders' story. I hope you enjoyed it. And now for those of you who are participating in the treasure hunt, here is my code. Thank you again for listening and enjoy the rest of the convention.